There we go.
Here we are. All right, welcome Facebook. This is a special edition of my show today. As you know, I have another coach on at 3 p.m., but this one is a little special to me because I got on Coach Nick Sainato. He was the manager at my school when I was at Cal State Fullerton. He helped me a lot, helped develop me. He was always rebounding for me and all those sort of things. And Coach Nick is just out now. He's a high school coach at El Toro High School, correct? El Toro High School right there in Fullerton, California, close by. And so this is a special edition. I usually only do one, but he's worth my time. No, I'm just kidding. No, this is a special one, but he's really big, and I'm glad that he's agreed to squeeze in between my other show, but we're going to have fun. So, Coach Nick, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll go with it.
Coach Nick Sainato, El Toro High School in South County. We're in Lake Forest, California. I'm the head boys basketball coach. I am a PE teacher. I teach PE, weight training, and I have my basketball class as a teacher at the school.
All right. So, Coach, let me ask you this question here. So this is a question I got from one of my followers. It was like, so he said, ask him, when did that first tail whooping that you caught as a coach, when did you know that, like, as a coach, this is real? So how did that work out for you? How was that experience?
You know, it was when I was, before I came here, I was at Clovis West High School, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but I had, coming from college, you know, you work with pros like you and Bobby and Frank and Ralphie and so on, so many pros. Right. And then you step into high school, none of those guys are at your level. We had some good players, but they weren't at your level. Most high school kids aren't. Right. And so, you know, you just think, you know, well, I helped develop JB. Like, you know, I'm going to step in here and this is all going to work. Well, it wasn't quite like that. And you start way from the beginning. And we were a really good program. And I remember I coached a team in the summer, and one of the coach who was supposed to coach said he couldn't do it. Coach, I'm not feeling well. I can't do it. I'm like, yeah, I'll go do it. Like, and it was, it was like 30 points at halftime, and we're just getting our butts kicked up and down the court. And, you know, I'm at least 3 steps behind this other coach, and they're dunking on us. They got guys, they're looking at the bench, and I'm like, oh boy, like, you know, you think that when you, I don't want to say move down a level, but when you go from college to high school, you just think it's going to be, you know, very simple, you know, and in fact, it really isn't. There's nothing simple in basketball, and this game is built to humble you. And so it's kind of, at least in my experience, whenever you think, I think I got it going on, the next day I get smacked around a little bit, and the Lord puts me in my place and reminds me of, why we're here, and we're not going to get too big headed. So I got a number of stories like that. Luckily, once I got in with the kids and used to high school, and we beat people more than they beat us, but there's always that time. And then, you know, coaching AAU, and we had an AAU program at Clovis West, which was our neighborhood kids, and we had it from 3rd grade all the way up, and I coached those teams for 11 years. You know, you have a really good AAU team, but in AAU, you know, you can have a good AAU team, then you go to Vegas and you play a team, and you're just bound to get thumped, you know, eventually, because some of those AAU teams are just phenomenal, and they're all stars from all over, and we're just the neighborhood kids. And so those types of things happened as well. And we would tell the kids, you know, you just, every once in a while, these things happen, and you get thumped, and you remember it. And it just reminds you to work hard, but it also reminds you, when you're on that end, when you're beating people really good, to win with class and to do it the right way, because, you know, there are teams that'll add insult to injury and will, you know, try to rub it in. And when you're on that end, it doesn't feel good. And then when you beat someone else, you got to remember not to treat people that way.
All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and lead into you tell us about your coaching journey and what made you actually get into coaching. I think I know, but tell the world what made you get into coaching, and tell us about your journey.
Well, getting out of high school, graduating high school, I didn't have any clue what I wanted to do. I got a chance to walk on at Mount San Jacinto Community College in Hemet, and I was there the year after Jamal Tinsley played. And when I was there in the summer working out with the team, Jamal Tinsley would come by, Zach Marbury would come by, Stefan's little brother or cousin, a relative of him somehow. Yeah. And they would have some real pros. And again, that was, coming from high school to junior college. Sometimes you think, well, it's just junior college. It's not that big a deal. Well, I mean, Jamal Tinsley obviously was an NBA
Right.
journeyman he was a different junior college player, but even the regular JC guys were terrific players. And so I played there for 2 years. I was a captain my sophomore year, and the coach there I really, really liked. He's a Hall of Fame coach, John Chambers, and he was a terrific coach. And I just, not the only thing I really cared about is basketball, in my life. The only thing I was really passionate about, besides my faith and family and things, but as far as work was concerned. And so the ball stopped bouncing for me at junior college as a player, and so I told Coach Chambers, I really want to be a coach, and how can you help me? And he said, well, you need to go into college, because I had my grades ready to transfer to most colleges. I was a 3.0 student. I had good grades.
Right.
And so I applied for Cal State Fullerton. I told him I got in, and he said, well, Coach Burton, Bob Burton, is a friend of mine. This is John Chambers talking. He just got the job, and I'll put in a word for you. And I said, great. And he did. I was working. This was the summer before I started at Fullerton. I was working at Disneyland at the time. And I got a phone call, and Coach Burton, in his, joyful, enthusiastic voice, Nick, I hear from John, my buddy John, and you're going to be our head manager. And I want to tell you, you're just as important as a player. So not the really good players, but you're still as important as a player. And I said, all right, cool. Well, I'm in. And then I showed up, and I ended up being a student assistant, a grad assistant, got my college paid for, my books paid for. I was on the same scholarship you were on. And I really got the coaching bug, and working with players and developing players and all the behind the scene things, which is a lot. And then I realized that I could, that's how I can minister to young people. And that's how I can, live my faith and share my faith and be who I am authentically through the sport that I love and the game that I love. And so I got into it that way, and I've been coaching year round ever since. This is, if I count the Fullerton years, this is 18 years or 17 years counting Fullerton, and 11, 14 in high school as a high school coach. And so I haven't stopped ever since you left and I left. It's been nonstop for 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, you were, like I say, you were big influential for me at Fullerton, because you helped me adapt when I got there. And so especially coming from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, you helped me adapt. But that journey is huge, because I'm glad you said that, because a lot of kids don't realize that basketball stops. So you got to have a plan B. And I understood that too. And yeah, so Coach Burton also thought I was going to be a coach one day. Funny that it panned out.
You're always smart enough, that's for sure.
All right, so you've been at Clovis West High School. So that was your first job?
Yes. So my first job, I kind of real similar. Once I finished at Cal State Fullerton, I was like, I want to be a teacher. I have my credential. I have my degree. What do I do? And Coach Burton said, well, I know the guy at Clovis West High School. And I had heard of Clovis West just because, as a college coach, you look at the high school stuff, but down at Fullerton, you don't need to recruit anywhere else but Orange County, LA, maybe San Diego, and then you get transfers if you can get them. At least that was our experience when we were there, because there's just so much talent. There's so much you can get a team that wins the Big West from LA and Orange County.
That's what our team was, except for me. Exactly,
all LA kids, and then has a couple transfers like you, and it worked, and Ralphie and guys like that. Right. And so, I heard of Clovis West, but I really didn't know a lot about them. I knew they were good. They're always in the paper in February and March. And I knew Chris Hernandez was a starting point guard at Stanford, and he was really good. And Tyrone Jackson, we played against Tyrone when he was at Arizona State, when we played there my freshman year, I think. Or excuse me, it would be my junior year at Fullerton, but my first year at Fullerton. Right. And so, he said, I know the coach at Clovis West. I can give a call for you. I said, okay, fine. I couldn't point out Fresno on a map. If someone said, Nick, I'd give you $1 million to point out where Fresno, I had no clue. And so I went up there. I talked to the coach on the phone. He said, yeah, I get a job for you. I'll make a teaching job for you if you want to come. And so I took the job sight unseen. I said, yeah, coach, I'll do it. And I drove up there with a friend of mine. And then we kind of looked at the place, and I was like, okay, it's fine. And then met the coaches, and then came back home and basically packed up my stuff and left, and put it all in my truck, and lived up there, got an apartment, and started from the bottom. We had a mattress on the floor, and I didn't hang up my clothes on my hangers. It was kind of the college life living there. And then you get a few paychecks, and starting teacher salary isn't a lot for most people, but coming from college, it was a lot. It was a ton.
Right.
And so you just kind of build up, and then you learn as a teacher. And that really helped me as a coach, as being a classroom teacher, is teaching. I taught English, and I taught intervention English for students who were far behind and had some learning issues and things. And I taught a class for kids who didn't pass the high school exit exam, which was a requirement at that time. And so you learn a ton being a classroom teacher, for at least I did, for a basketball coach. Then you get ingrained in the program, and Clovis West basketball is 11 months a year, and it's kindergarten through 12th grade. And I just got off the phone yesterday with a player that I had, and he's a grad assistant at Washington State for the men's team. And I literally coached him from first grade to 12th grade. And, and he was there right when I started, and he was finished a couple of years before I finished. And that's how we did it there. And it was very, very unique to any program, but we literally had a kindergarten team, a kindergarten league, and we had third grade AAU that we traveled, and we did that half the year. Then we had our season, and I learned how to build a real high school program. And then I did that for 11 years. I worked for 2 Hall of Fame coaches, Tom Orlich, who has won over 800 high school games, who's a Hall of Famer, one of the top high school coaches ever. And he's at Stanford as one of the top assistants at Stanford for their men's team now. They just signed Zaire Williams, the McDonald's All-American, top guy. Yeah. And then I work for Vance Wahlberg, and Vance Wahlberg is maybe one of the more famous basketball coaches of our time. And I worked for him and was his JV coach and his assistant, and learned a lot from those guys during my time. And so I was there for 11 years, and then a job down here opened up, and I interviewed for it, and I got it. And now I'm starting my 4th year, will be this upcoming year, will be my 4th season with this team. So, a lot of hours, a lot of good kids, a lot of hard work. And I've been able to be fortunate when I think about John Chambers at Mount San Jacinto, Bob Burton at Cal State Fullerton, Tom Orlich and Vance Wahlberg, who are all literally Hall of Fame coaches in their own right. And some of them even world and nationally famous coaches. I've been real lucky. Then you mix in the type of players that I've had, like you and Bobby, and the players that I had at D1 guys at Clovis West, and the guys I have here. I've been very, very blessed in my basketball journey.
Right. So let's talk that Clovis West journey for a little bit, and then we'll get into some culture stuff. So would you say that because they started from first grade all the way up to 12th grade, would you say that developmental league or AAU program, so to speak, was very vital to the success at Clovis West?
It was key. When those kids, when those first, second, and third graders sat in the stands of our varsity games, it was their dream to play. We had kids every year who they dreamed of being a Clovis West varsity Golden Eagle. Like that was it for them. Like they did it since they were 4 and 5 years old. And so the culture was in there where, this is the big time playing for us. And it was for them, and it was for us. And we built the relationships. When you get a kid, when you step on a high school campus and you haven't coached a kid till that first day in his high school career, it takes a lot of building to work with that kid. But when you've known them and their parents since they were in elementary school, like you can get on them in a way that they understand. Like this, I already know this guy loves me. He's like a brother to me. He's like an uncle to me. Like we could really, really coach them because we have built those relationships with them during AAU basketball. And for them, when they played AAU basketball, it meant everything to win and lose. And for us, it did too as coaches, but we knew there was a bigger picture. And so we built that culture with them where with the time they made it to high school, man, it was, you pick, they say, you want me to run through which wall, this wall, that wall? I mean, I'll do it, whatever. And that's from the top guy, the D1 guys that we had, all the way to the last guy on the bench. They loved it. And we didn't get transfers very often. It was all homegrown neighborhood kids who could walk. Every one of them could walk to school from their home. Every one of them lived and grew up in our elementary, our middle school, and our high school. Sans maybe a couple, kids move and things like that. But it was very unique to the high school experience, very, very unique to the high school experience. And I think that's why we played in 7 CIF championship games, why we went to the state tournament every year, while we had, every year kids sign at different schools. I mean, that had a lot to do with it. I really believe that.
Did you win a ring there?
Not a state ring. We played in several state tournaments, and we went a couple rounds in there. But eventually, we play at that time. When we went to the state tournament, we were the central section, and we moved down to the southern section. And the southern section state playoffs, we were always Division One. Southern section state playoffs, Division One. I mean, it's very, very competitive. I mean, there were, very, very good teams there. And so while we were very good as well, we always, I mean, one year we played against Spencer Dinwiddie. One year we played against, gosh, who else? I'm drawing a blank. Every year it was an NBA player we played against in high school. Every year by the time we got there in the high school. So we never got that far in there. But on our area, we were always king. Like I said, 7 CIF finalists. We won. I mean, I didn't even know how many times we won league, because at that time it wasn't even about league. Like, league wasn't even a big thing. I mean, we just won it. Like, it wasn't. I mean, it was a big thing, but it wasn't even something we looked like. It was league, CIF, state, and that was all we were trying to do. So, we didn't get the big prize. We got a lot of little prizes in between, which were good and which, mean a lot to us still.
So I still don't have the complete understanding of it. What exactly is the CIF? How is that different from state playoffs in California? Because I know some people.
So CIF is the section.
Okay.
So for example, CIF in the Central Valley was all the teams in the Central Valley, basically from Bakersfield to, I can't think, Bakersfield to, we'll just say Fresno, right from there, right in that area. Bakersfield to Fresno is about a couple 100-mile area. Gotcha. And then after Fresno, it's Sacramento, it's the Northern California, Sacramento, San Francisco, Bay Area, things like that. So CIF is that particular area. Okay. So that was the CIF. And then once you win in CIF, or even over a finalist, then you go to the Southern section. And the Southern section is all the teams from that CIF. So the LA CIF, the Orange County CIF, the San Diego CIF champs and runners up. Then you play in a bigger tournament with them. And that's how you end up getting the state. California is unique in that there are thousands of teams and, and a lot of games in the playoffs. I've talked to a lot of people from the East Coast and Midwest, and they have like one playoffs, and then, that's it. You play and you win, and then you go to state and then you win that or lose. Right. Here in California, there are several different avenues kind of to get there, because there are so many teams, and it would not be, you want them playing, because if I remember the year before I came to Clovis West, they played Bakersfield High, and they had Robert Swift, who played for the Seattle Sonics, and they had a couple of their D1 guys. Well, we beat them. Clovis West beat them in the playoffs, and they were done. Like, they didn't make the state playoffs. They didn't do anything. So here you have a team with an NBA player and several D1 guys who finish in February, when they should at least, when they could have beaten 90% of the teams in the state. Yeah. So what they did is they've opened it up so more and more teams make it, and that's how they end up going with CIF and state. How they decide now in the Southern section who makes what, that's a mathematical formula that I'm not really good at, but they let a lot of teams in, and they let a lot of teams play.
So on average, how many teams will make the state tournaments, so to speak?
The state tournament, each division, from now it's open, Division 1, then 2, and then 2 AA, 3 AA, and so on. There's anywhere, the open has, that's the modern days, the Sierra Canyons of the world. That's like 8 teams. Right. Or 16 teams, 8 from the south and 8 from the north. Right. And then in Division 1 and lower, you'll probably have anywhere from 20 to 32 teams, somewhere in there. And they'll go like 10 or 12 from one section, 10 or 12 from the north, and they all play in the state for the finals. And that's what we got. That's what got interrupted this year with the virus and everything. There were still teams playing. So
30. So you say your state playoffs makes 32 after sectionals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Y'all do y'all do? Because I know in North Carolina we don't do it here in South Carolina, but North Carolina they do a conference tournament. Y'all do that?
Nope, no conference tournament. Just the regular season, and then regular season, and then your conference games, and then you have a champion and a runner up. So
the champion and the runner up go to the CIF sectionals?
Usually, yes. Usually they'll go to CIF. Sometimes in our league has 10 teams, and our league is one of the one at El Toro is one of the better public school leagues in Orange County. So this year, I want to say like 7 or 6 teams made it from our league to the playoffs. Most leagues you'll get, 2 or 3 teams will make it to the playoffs, depending on the strength of their league.
Gotcha. All right. So, when you took over El Toro after coming from Clovis West, what was your first tactic or first focus when you begin to build culture there the way you do it?
Well, the program that I went to at El Toro was already an established program. The coach who was there, he left because he took a college job in junior college, and so there was, it was a good program. It wasn't, when you talked about you possibly taking over some programs or being involved with some programs who were on the other end. This was a good program, and so. But when a new coach takes over, even when what the other coach did was right, and what I believe what I'm doing is right, there's still that transition with the players. It's just there's a new voice, there's a new head coach in town, and so it took some time to build that culture with the kids. And there was a lot of things that, because his culture was really good, obviously very successful, and his culture was right, and my culture, I believe, it was very successful, and I believe my culture is right, but it doesn't just transition quite that easy. So it took some time to work with the kids and work with the parents, and my style of play was different from their style of play. And I think that might have been the biggest thing, is that it was so much, my vernacular was different, my rules were different, so much different than what they were used to,
Mhm.
that they kind of look at me sideways when I would tell them some of the things that they've been their whole life been told on the basketball court is right, and I'm telling them that's not the right way to play, just on the court things. And so it took some time to build that and kind of transition them into how we wanted to play and how I wanted to run a program.
So what is your style of play? Is it the old Cal State Fullerton get up and down, or are you
It
like?
is. It is, but it's got a couple more rules, and I learned this from Coach Wahlberg. I mean, we don't, we're 3 and key. We don't shoot any pull-up jump shots, any mid-range. We don't even catch the ball in the mid-range unless we're playing against a zone. We don't catch the ball anywhere but in the key or outside the three-point line. I'd rather them catch the ball at the NBA three than at the free throw line. So we spread the floor that way. We don't shoot off the dribble unless it's a layup. We don't shoot floaters. I believe floaters is one of the worst shots in basketball. We don't shoot off the dribble. We don't do anything pull up. Very, very rarely, but we definitely don't teach it, and it's not part of our philosophy to do. We don't like to set a lot of ball screens, because I believe that, you were talking with your other coach how important ball screens are. And I think you're right. But in my world of playing in pace and space, you don't bring another defender up to the ball. You know what I mean? You don't bring an automatic double team. Like, why would you bring an automatic double team? Now, if you watched our film, we do ball screens, but not very often. It's not a huge part of our philosophy. So those types of things, what I try to convince them is we want to shoot shots that only score 3 points, because 3 is the most you can score in a possession. I mean, you can get a 4, but very rare. In a season, how many times you get the 4-point play? Very rare.
Right.
3 is the most you can score. So if you shoot a floater, you don't get 3 points, because people don't foul, because as a floater, you're going away from the defender. You know what I mean? Like, there's no chance to get fouled shooting. Oh, there is, but you're going away when you're shooting a floater.
Right.
We don't shoot pull-ups because no one's going to foul you. The cardinal sin in basketball is what? Fouling a jump shooter, right? So you're not going to get fouled on that shot. So when you think about pace and space, when you think about points per possession, the best way to do it is shooting shots that only get you 3. So we shoot layups, we shoot threes, and we shoot free throws. And the points per possession is 1.8 in the key. And I'm sure you know this, 1.8 in the key, 1.6 at the free throw line, and then 1.2 at the 3. But the corner 3 is right about 1.3 and 1.4 points per possession. So layups, free throws, and corner 3s are my favorite. And we try to teach that and do that. But if you've grown up your whole life and you've loved that one dribble pull up and you're good at it, that you and I don't see eye to eye on that. That's a tough thing to break as you're a senior in high school, and guys that I got, because they were always good at that shot, and they are good at it. But for the way I like to play, doesn't work. And so we work together in that. And even some of the, I had coaches leave my staff because they didn't believe that's the right way to play. And I respect them, and it's fine. But, when we play that way, it is different, because if you can't play, in my opinion, you can't play fast-paced basketball and shoot pull-ups, because it has to be going to the basket. You know what I mean? Or shooting threes. And so we would do that, and it gave a little bit of pause for some of the kids and parents, and because parents, they whether they've played or not, they many of them consider themselves experts in the game, and so for me to come in my first head coaching job to give a philosophy that no one else in the area did, or no one that I knew of, it was different, and there was some challenges in getting it to work.
So, let's continue talking about philosophy. Where did you learn that philosophy? Obviously, we know we played fast paced at Cal State Fullerton, but what style of play did Coach Wahlberg play and your coach at Clovis West? Did they play that same style of play, or did you come up with that outside of a collaboration of everybody?
Well, if you get one person who's responsible for the 3 and key, it's Vance Wahlberg. I mean, he invented that. He eliminated the pull-up jump shot 20 years ago, and that's that type of philosophy is what propelled him to the NBA and coaching at Kentucky and coaching Division I and all over. Coach Orlich was similar to that. It wasn't as hard, pressed as that, and it was more for him. It was more, if you're good enough to do it, you can do it. And I like that. And we had a couple D1 guys. I mean, we had Denzel Johnson, who played 4 years at Santa Clara. His pull-up jump shot was money, and it was money. And so we shot it and he shot it. And he was the D1 guy. It worked. It was good. The rest of the kids, right, not quite as much. We had another kid, Adrian Antunes, who just scored 1,000 points at Azusa Pacific as an NAIA school in Fresno. And his floater was unguardable. And, it was like, look, floater is the worst shot in basketball, or one of them, but he's so good at it, we let him do it. And so the talent helped determine the analytics. But for the most part, I would say Wahlberg really influenced me most on that. And then with Tom, I got a little bit of wiggle room. We're like, okay, if you got a player who's good enough, let's not hold him back. Let's let him play his game. Right. But you just have to decide who's good enough to play their game and who needs to fall in line with the system. And that's kind of sometimes the touchy part.
Gotcha. So with that, in talking about Coach Wahlberg and Coach Orland, are they still your mentors? Do you still talk to them today, or who are your mentors as it pertains to coaching?
Definitely, I still talk to Orlich and Wahlberg, mostly through text. And especially when the season's going, we'll be texting, how's your team going? How's this? And we see them and we do it through that. Every once in a while, get some film from Stanford and just kind of watch, although the college game is so much different from ours. You don't get a whole lot from them, except maybe not a balance play or something like that.
Right.
But, my mentors in the game, I would say it's them. I would say it's my friends, my assistant coaches that I work with. When you become a head coach, man, there's just so much, and taking time out for myself or taking time out to grow for me, it takes a back seat to running a program, because There's just so much in it. And it's more important to me to work on my feeder program than it is to call a coach so I can get some, feedback on things for my personal, basketball stuff. And that, and maybe that's something I got to get better at, is, to take more time for me and work with these, because I've listed a great group of coaches, and they, between all the coaches that I mentioned, you're talking about hundreds of years of coaching experience. There isn't anything that I'm going to go through that they haven't gone through, except maybe the coronavirus. But, right. But besides that, I do look up to them. I do talk to Coach Burton. I would say maybe on the phone, where we talk maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, and then texting throughout the year. But let me put it this way. I talk to more coaches about their own personal programs and their own game and their own life than I talk about my life to older coaches. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I understand. I try to keep a running list of people, but when you're in season, it's kind of hard, especially as a head coach. You now have to be the eyes. You've now gone from being here to there. So now everything that falls in that triangle or that pyramid of leadership, now you're at the top of that. So now you not only have to manage 3 to 4 assistant coaches, then you have to manage 15 guys on your varsity team, then 15 guys on JV, and then you said you got freshman A and B,
and a sophomore B, and a JV B. So we have 5 teams.
Yeah, so you have 5 teams with, let's just say, 15 kids. You said you got 80 kids in your program. That is a lot of kids to have in a program, and so you don't really have the time, I can see why you don't have the time, because you have to be focused on your program and what's coming up and making sure they're getting what they need, so that when they get to the next team, it's just adding on to what they learn and get to the next team. And finally, when they get to you, they're so fluent in your system, it doesn't really matter.
That's the idea.
Yeah, I get it. Like, 'cause so you would say the developmental league, or as a whole, okay, so this is my question. Do you think a developmental league is important? And if you don't have a developmental league with middle school teams, you have feeder programs that feed into your program. Do you think it's important that those teams run some of the varsity system, all of the varsity system, or none at all? Give the middle school coaches their freeway.
That's a great question. I do have a feeder system. I have a 3rd grade through 8th grade feeder system called South County. And it's an AAU club, but it's just neighborhood kids. We only take kids in our area. It's not, we don't recruit. We don't look for kids out of area. We want kids who are, at least at that moment, planning to go to El Toro High School. And so, yes, I have my high school coaches. For the most part, my high school coaches run it, and my high school assistants, because with 5 teams, you're talking about 5 head coaches and a couple assistants. So we usually have enough. And, I have them, we do the same drills. We have the same vernacular. We a little bit different. Like when you're teaching 3rd graders, like it's not 3 or key with 3rd graders. You can't, if you do that, they'll never score. I mean, not many 3rd graders can shoot a 3. Same with 4th graders.
Right.
But 5th grade's when they, you start to, get it, that shot pretty good, and you can kind of stress that a little bit more. And then 6th and 7th and 8th grade, then yes, we do. We keep it right in that same vein. I expect them to play the same way that I ask my varsity to play, because when they get to us, the drills are the same, the vernacular is the same, the coaching is the same, the philosophy is the same. They know where they're going to get their shots. They know where the rebounds are going to go. They know all the stuff that we've preached since they were in 3rd grade. That is a huge advantage for us, because if you're playing the neighborhood kid role and you're not getting transfers, you're not looking for transfers, you got to be on the same page. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to. The only way you win is to win as a team. You don't win as a couple individuals and a bunch of regular kids. You have to win as a team. So that philosophy, that everyone being on the same page, is critical to that. Right. Because if you have guys on different pages, and to be honest, they're probably average basketball players, you're not going to win. If
Right.
you have average kids, we've got to be a fist. We've got to be a team, and everyone's for that guy next to him, and everyone knows what we're doing. We have a game plan, and sometimes that game plan means you shoot a bunch of shots, and sometimes that game plan means I don't shoot it, and sometimes someone else's turn, and everyone's bought into it. That's the only way to win, and at least with my experience, that's the only way to win in public high school basketball, with a neighborhood group.
So your system is unique, and it's actually unique. It's actually pretty interesting. The not being able to shoot a pull-up jump shot, that would be, for me, that would be hard as a player, because that was one of my shots.
Yeah. And we worked on that. You and I would work on that all the time.
Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to shift to practice plan a little bit. How much time do you have to adequately put into planning for a 2.5, let's just go 2.5, we'll say 3-hour practice, even though I know we don't get that much time in high school. So we'll go 2.5-hour practice. How much time, because that system is unique and you have to break some habits from people. If, you had to break some habits, now you still may have to break some, but you're training that from 3rd to 8th grade. So how much time are you putting into planning that practice plan that may be 2.5 hours? Because they gotta, that seems like that has to be drilled over and over and over again. So you have to have, so I'm going to guess and go out on a limb and say that you got a bunch of drills that go with that.
Absolutely. And the right answer to that is the entire practice time we spend working on that. That's the right answer. I've kind of had to go, I've spent more time working on opponent stuff at practice than my own stuff than I ever have, because we just have always been good, but we have to, we've been good at what we've done, but not good enough to where, like at Clovis West, we knew we played our style. We were going to beat anybody. Like that's all we worked on was us. And we touched a little bit on scouting report on things at the other team, but we just knew we were going to press, we were going to run. Our philosophy was better than theirs. Our players were better than theirs, and we were going to beat them. At El Toro, it's much more even, and at many times we're probably at a disadvantage talent-wise. and coaching wise. And so, I've spent a lot of time working on the other team stuff as well. But in the perfect world, when I get the team that, when we're up through and it takes time when you build from third grade on to get those guys. I mean, it takes many years. We're working 100% on our stuff, and 100%. And you're right, I have a ton of drills. We have daily 45 that we would do. And it's hard for me to squeeze in everything I want within 3 hours. Like, it's hard. At Clovis West, we would practice. I'm not kidding you. We practice 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on a Saturday. And we look at the clock like, well, so we've been here 5 hours? Oh, well, okay, let's roll the ball. I mean, we just play. I mean, if you're a hooper, if you're a ball player, it's paradise because it's 24/7 basketball. You know what I mean? It's 24/7. Who doesn't want to practice all day and play competitive games against good competition and coaches who are coaching you the entire time? I mean, that's, for me, for us, that's paradise. Who doesn't want that? But there are some kids who don't want that. And it does get that you do get, that's why we became coaches, because we couldn't get enough of it. And that's why there's a need of coaches, because there aren't as many kids who feel the same way that you and I do. But we would, in a perfect world, we practice on 100%. And I have daily 45, I have blood drills, all types of drills that we can do all day and all night that work on specifically those philosophies that I've taught, and even more that I haven't even gotten into, specifically those things that we would get into the game. I mean, how many times, think about it, coach, how many times do you practice something, work on something in practice, and you never do it in a game? I fell victim to that. You work on this pull-up or these dribble combination moves, or, this play or this whatever, and you never execute it in a game. My goal is to do exactly what we practice and do that exactly in a game. And many times we do it.
So with that, I've been talking to, like I say, I've been talking to coaches, but I feel like that a team's practice, just me, and I'm going to stay on you, but just me, I feel like a team's practice should be a resemblance of their system.
Absolutely.
Like, for me, as I've told you, I play up tempo. I don't do the 7 seconds or less, but I'm more of a 12 seconds or less. I want the ball on the rim, because my one thing that I emphasize a lot is offensive rebound, offensive rebound, offensive rebound. So we're not going to not offensive rebound. And I read a quote. It says, "It's rebounding is not a skill; it's an effort thing." And so if we put in the effort, I mean, you saw it at Cal State Fulton, we put in that effort to go. So with that, because it goes into so much practice planning, and I mean, so with your practice planning, how much time do you prepare for that 2.5 hour practice? Or your team already knows your drills and they know it's coming, or you have to prepare for a certain set of drills that you're going to do today, and then a certain set of drills you're going to do tomorrow? How long do you practice? How long do you meet with your staff, or plan by yourself? Because a lot of times you have to plan by yourself in high school, unless you meet after practice, because you don't get a lot of time to meet before practice. So how long do y'all plan?
So planning, well, first with the drills, and that's the beauty of doing it from third grade on, is there's not a lot of transition when you do them in high school. They know them. When I say blood 22, they know it. They run to it. When I say cardinal scramble, they run right to it. When I say the shooting drills, they know exactly what it is. There's not a lot of teaching. That's from the first day of practice. Not a lot of teaching on it, especially at the varsity level.
Yeah.
So they know those things. That saves us a lot of time. Then when it comes to planning the practice, I'm in contact with my assistants every day, and we text every day, because in high school, it's not like in college where, Andy Newman and Jason Levy are right in the office next door, and you can meet with them whenever you feel like. And they all have regular jobs and they work 9 to 5. And so I can't possibly meet with them during the day. So we text during the day. Hey, what are some things we need to see at practice? What are some things we need to emphasize? And what are some things you guys want to do? And they'll put in their 2 cents. And most of the time I'll use it. Some of the times I maybe want to go a different way, but we'll talk every day about what we want to do for practice. And then I'll plan the practices depending on where we're at in the season. And what I've heard from my assistants and the feel that I have. Then I'll plan the practice myself. Practice planning usually takes, for me to type it all out and write it all out, maybe 30 minutes to an hour to do it all. And then I'll get that and I'll have that done and I have it ready for them. And then when I do it, I post I have every day, I have a quote of the day, because I love quotes. Coaches, and you already had a couple, coaches love quotes. And I have a quote of the day, and then I have what teams they're on, and they're blue or white. And they know what jersey they're going to wear when practice starts, blue or white. And then I have the practice plans ready available every day. I have the practice plans on the table where I have the clock because we have time for every drill we time. We score every drill. We stat every drill. And so I have the practice plan right there, and they look at it, and I let them, they see it, and they say, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Practice is going to be this amount of time. And they do it. It's an open book. My lesson plan is not a secret. I want them to know. And so I leave it out there for them, and they take a look at it. And then once we start, we get going, and it's usually anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day that we'll practice, depending on where we're at in the season.
Gotcha. So let's talk your offensive. Let's talk your offense. Pace and space. How does it look? You got 4 out of round 1. You got 5 out. You got 3 out, 2 in. Talk me through pace and space and how I can possibly incorporate pace and space, like maybe not all of it, but some of it into my game, or to a coach that's watching, they can incorporate pace and space.
So the first thing I'll start with is the numbering. So you have a numbering system. Number 1 is the point guard. The 2 is your best shooter. So your 2 is your best shooter, and your 2 is always on the right side, because when I want corner threes and you have a right-hander dribbling down the slot, which is the lane line I call the slot, or the nail, and you have a right-hander going down the nail, the defense will converge and that corner 3 is open. So your 2 is your best shooter. Okay. Your 3 is your best driver on the left side, and also a very good shooter. Now the 3 is on the left side wing. Your 4 is your best player. And so my best player, it's always a competition within my teams. We have who every year's 4 was. The 4, everyone wants to be the 4. The 4 is your, and I shouldn't say best player, but your 4 is your best driver and your best attacker, and he can get to the rim and he can shoot. Your best all-around offensive player. Okay. And then your 5 is your post. And so those numbers, we don't say shooting guard. I still don't know what the word small forward means. We don't say any of that. We don't use that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And all of those numbers are clearly defined. Right. Now the 5, his role, and you wouldn't like this, but the 5 is always opposite the ball. That's the number 1 rule. Always opposite the ball. So what does that eliminate?
Post-ups.
Post-ups, correct. Post-ups to me are one of the least, not to me, the numbers have shown that post-ups are one of the least effective ways to score the basketball. It just is. Catching the ball with your back to the basket, one is think about it. Like, you're catching the ball and you can't even see the basket. That philosophy in itself is counterproductive to what you think. And then, we don't post up very often. Now, players above analytics, talent above analytics. We have a kid this year, and he's 6'7" and growing. He might be bigger now in the next month, and he can play above the rim, and he's strong and he's heavy. And we were really gonna work on posting him up this year, because he's big enough to do it. I think he's good enough to do it. And if the player is, we do it. But for the most part, the 5's role is always opposite the ball, because what that means is when the ball drives, there's not a 5 in there, a big 6'7", 225-pound guy in the way, and his defender in the way of the ball. So we're always opposite. And then the 5, his job is to run right down the middle of the floor, right down the middle, from the split line, the nail, right down the middle from the split line, the nail. That's his job offensively. And the 5, people don't realize this. People always think in this offense that the point guard is the key, or the 4 is the key. The 5 is the key. When we're playing our best, it's because the 5 runs the floor, and because the 5 is opposite the ball well enough to where his defender stays away from the ball, or his defender comes over, and we're throwing lobs all day. That's our post up, is we throw lobs, and we throw lobs to dunk. We have yet thrown a lob dunk in my career there. It's just lob, catch, and finish. It's just lob, catch, and finish. And we do that very, very often. That's how we teach post play, is doing that.
So your 5 runs. So if you're taking the ball out of bounds, your 5 runs the rim.
The 4 is always the inbounder.
4 takes it out, and then your 2 and your 3. Your 2 is on your right side. Your 3 is on your left side. Mm-hmm. You are all your outlets to the right.
Depends. It just depends. Okay. Generally, yes, because now most players are right-handed, right? Now my 3 years, I've only had left-handed point guards. So I run a right-handed offense, and in my 3 years, I've had a left-handed point guard, and so. It's kind of shifted things a little bit, but yes, ideally to the right, but it's not to the right because it's just the right. It's to the right. It's because that's your point guard's strong hand. So why not start with the ball in your point guard's strong hand, go in downhill, down the court with a strong hand? Why not do that? And so, yes, the 4 always takes it out unless it's an inbounds play on the baseline or maybe sideline. But in the backcourt, the 4 always takes it out because the 4, being one of our best players, should be able to handle pressure if there's a press. If you have the 5 take it out and some teams press, well, I mean, that 5's going to have a hard time bringing the ball up. He's going to be really a decoy in the backcourt, which is the worst place to be.
Gotcha. So, okay, continue me through your pace and space. So now when you get in the half court, how far apart are your corners, your tops, I call them slots, but your corners, your slots, how far apart are they? Obviously, if the ball's on the right side of the court, the big is opposite. So how far apart, how far down do you want that point guard to go? Does your point guard get close? How close do you allow them to play if they're in a 2-man game? Yeah, talk me through that.
So what I do at the beginning of every year, I put down tape, blue tape, little squares of blue tape in our 4 spots. And so we have one advantage as high school coaches is that we have the volleyball lines and we have even the badminton lines and different lines on our court. Well, we use those to our advantage. So when we teach, we talk about the volleyball line or get to that badminton line or get to that area because that's a spot where we know. And so I put the tape down right about the volleyball line, slot extended, volleyball line at the top of the key area. There's 2 spots there.
Yeah.
And then your free throw line extended right towards the sideline, not on the sideline, obviously, but not on the 3-point line either, right in between the 3-point line and the sideline on the 2 and the 3. And so that is, the volleyball line, and those 4 spots is where if we set up in the half court, that's where everyone should stand. And we get to our home games and they just stand right on, they go right to the blue. And then we do our drills from those spots. And so when I said, get me someone that will do a breakdown of our drill, give me a 1, a 3, and a 4. And they go right to the 1, 3, and 4. And the spot's already there. And the tape comes up sometimes, but I put it right back down. And they know exactly where they're supposed to be. And then they instinctively go to those spots. As we run the offense and the offense flows, once you get to the free throw line or below, once you get to the free throw line, you're looking to drop. And drop is my word for backdoor. So, I like 1-syllable words. I like, because it's easier to say drop than it is to say backdoor. It's easier to say drop Jamal than backdoor Jamal when you're in a game and it's going fast. Right. And when we have our own language like drop, nail, slot, the other team doesn't know it. I could say, let's run, let's loop. Loop is another one. Let's loop Bobby and drop Jamal. And the other team, because I don't know what that means. And we do it. And so our language is a little bit different. That works to our advantage, at least right now. So once you get to the free throw line, if you have to stop above the free throw line, you're looking to drop the 2 or 3. Those guys are looking to backdoor, or we're looking to kick back. They'll come up above the top of the key extended, and you throw a backwards pass to them, and they go downhill right towards the nail. And if you get below the free throw line, you have your mentality is to score. Gotcha. You're not looking to pull up. You're looking to get to the rack and finish, or a lob for your 5, or a skip, a corner skip, or a baseline skip if you can get to 2 feet and there's nothing there and you throw it over the top. And all of our players, you say, what does the point guard do? All of our players, all 4 of them have that same rule. The point guard brings the ball up, but then after that, he feels if as we start to run our motion, he gets in the 2 spot, well, he runs with the 2 run. We all run the same thing. And that's the idea, is we don't run a lot of plays. We teach them how to play. And you should be able to know how to play the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Really, you could have how many teams are good with an undersized center? A lot. In my experience, a lot of them, because the undersized guys are just more skilled. They just have more of a basketball IQ than sometimes your big, loppy guys who have been forced to play their whole life.
Right. We were definitely good at that undersized ball.
Absolutely. With you were more of a perimeter player, I thought, but you had post skill, and then Yafet was definitely a perimeter player. Yeah. And Hardy was and then, you were the biggest one at 6'6", 6'7". You were the biggest post player that we had there.
Right.
And Yafet was 6'2", and Hardy is 6'4", 6'5". You're talking about Division I basketball. Those are small post guys, and we were super successful with you guys.
Yeah, we were small my junior year. We got a little bigger my senior year with Justin being 6'7", but he only weighed.
Justin was 6'7", correct.
But he only weighed 200 pounds. But that junior year, you're talking LB, Ralphie, Jermaine, me, and Yafet after Hardy tore his ACL. That was, you went 6'7", 6'4", 6'4", 6'1".
And let me tell you, there are high school teams in my league taller than that.
Wow.
In our league, taller than that.
There's some teams out there that are bigger than that.
Not better, but taller.
Modern day, Mount Verde is way bigger than us.
Way bigger.
They're starting at 6'4" point guard, and they got 6'6" at the wings
across the board.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. So your 2 and 3 are kind of in the corner, but not in the corner, correct?
Well, they play in relation to the ball. So that's the idea. Our rule is if the ball, so picture the ball, and if I was in my office, I don't have maybe I'm wrong for this. I don't have a whiteboard at home, but maybe that's a good thing. But picture the ball in the opposite slot. Okay, opposite slot volleyball line. Okay,
Right.
and on the 3-side slot volleyball line, right next to the left on the left of the top of the key. If you're the 2, your rule is to always be in the corner. If you are opposite the ball, you are in the corner. So what that does is that opens up a gap. So if you can picture that, you have the ball at the 3-side slot volleyball line, and then your only other offensive player is in the corner, and he's your best shooter. There's a whole lot of space between the slot, the nail, the opposite slot, and the corner for you to make your way to the basket. As he comes up, now that 2 is reading it. So if that 2 sees, oh, you know what, my guy is being guarded, he's not going to be able to make it to the basket. I have to decide what my defender is doing. We call it X2. Do you understand what that is? So if you're on a whiteboard, the O's are always offense and the X is always defense, right? So if the X's are defenses and you're guarding the 2, you're the X2. Does that make sense?
Right.
So now you look at what X2 is doing. If X2's eyes are on the ball, you probably could look to drop because he's going to step over and try to get in the way of the ball, especially if you have a good 4. Then you look to drop and you have that backdoor attempt. If your defender's eyes are on you and not letting you, or not really looking at the ball, you probably are better coming up high for a kickback. So that way you can get it. He's closing you out. You're going strong. You're going downhill to the basket. And so you play in relation to the ball, if that makes sense.
So you're about to make me get up and get my whiteboard, but so that opposite. So okay, if I'm looking at the court,
yeah,
I got the ball here, and you're opposite here in this corner. So I'm here with the ball. There's the same side guy, right? That's in the corner too.
No, so you have that guy's on the other side.
Okay. So he's so the guy that would be, my 2 that technically was running the right lane is now on the left side in the corner.
If the ball's on the left side, that 2's on the right side.
2's on the right side. Okay.
The ball's on the left side.
Yeah, I forgot you got a left-handed point guard. So the ball's on the left side. So you got the 1 and the 3 on the same side. And then you got the 2 and the 4 kind of opposite the ball, and the 5 opposite the ball as well.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So now that 1 goes downhill.
Yes.
Is 4 coming around the loop, or is it the 2? Because if the 1 comes downhill, I guess my question is, if the 1 comes downhill, where is this 4 going if 2 is going to come back around for the kickback?
Everyone is on we have a strong side going away from the ball. So if you have that ball here and my 2 is in the corner, okay, picture those. My 5 is here on the block.
Right.
My 3 is in this corner and my 4 is on the free throw line extended, away from the 2, which is right here. Okay. So the ball's here. This is the 2 in the corner. So everyone's on this side of the ball. Away from the ball.
Nobody's away. Everybody's away from the ball.
So we basically opened up an isolation for that guy with the ball. And it's actually in the 4 spot, but it could be the 1. But it's whoever gets it. You open up the isolation for that guy. And you're saying, look, we're at the playground. You're going one-on-one. Get to the basket. Get to the basket. And we teach them moves on how to do it. And then we teach counters if the defense guards them. And then we play out of that. We want to force closeouts. That's our job. We want to force the defense to close out. Closeouts are one of the hardest defensive fundamentals to master. And so we want to take advantage of that. And closeouts are things that a lot of teams don't work on that well. And we want to take advantage of that. So the more you force a closeout, the better chance you have to get by your guy.
Gotcha. Okay. So for me, would you also play into either a closeout, or with that, you get a lot of people 2 onto the ball and you're kicking it out?
Exactly. You want to get 2 on the ball and kick it out.
Yeah. So you're still drawing 2 people to the ball.
Yeah.
That is good. So in a preseason, I think now the high school federation across the world across the nation has opened it up to where now you get those 6 weeks to practice and you can be full blown. Then you have to take 2 weeks off, and then you start your season. So do you do the individual workouts like we did in school? Because I know talking to Coach Taylor, he was like, they go, now you can do everybody. But do you like to do the 4-man individual workouts?
I would love to be able to do it. But remember, in a high school gym time is few and far between.
Right.
So we're fighting with one. I have 5 teams. Remember that. Now they don't all practice alone. Most of my JV and sophomore team usually practice together. My freshman teams usually practice together in one slot, one time. And then the girls team has 3 teams, our girls basketball team. And then it's also during girls volleyball season. So they have gym priority. And then go ahead.
In one gym?
We have 2 gyms. We have a main gym and a back gym.
Okay.
So we have 2 gyms. So from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, that gym is occupied by boys basketball, girls volleyball, band and color guard are always trying to get in. They're always trying to weasel their way in the gym. It's used. And so I would love to be able to schedule, the 1s and 4s from 3 to 4, and then the 2s, 3s, and 5s from 4 to 5, and do it like that. But I just don't have the time, and then bring us all together the next day. I don't have the time to do all that. So we do a lot of individual work at practice, especially in the preseason. We'll do those things. We'll just do it all together in the same gym.
With practice, still talking about practice, like after you've practiced, say Monday, Tuesday, let's just say you practice Monday, you play the game Tuesday. How do you decide what you're going to focus on in practice on Wednesday and Wednesday following the game, and then probably Thursday prior to the game that you're going into on Friday? How do you decide what you're going to practice on those 2 days?
So in league, and we'll talk about it in league, because league is the only set Tuesday or Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday, Friday. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So in league, normally what we would do is Mondays would be our conditioning. We're doing the most running on Monday, the most contact drills on Monday, just because if someone tweaks an ankle or pops a finger on Monday, we hope to get them ready by Wednesday. You know what I mean? Mondays are full conditioning. Tuesdays, a little bit less conditioning, a little bit less contact, and more preparation for the other team. Then we play Wednesday. Thursday is very little conditioning, stretching, body, take care of your body, shooting, prep for the next team, which is Friday. And then we fix the things that we need to get better on for our Friday game and get ready to prepare for them. And then Friday we play. And so we do that consistently for about 3 or 4 weeks. If there isn't any other rescheduled games or things that have to happen, we try to keep that pretty consistent. Once we get into league, our practices are an hour and a half usually. I'd like to get them out earlier, but sometimes you can't. Like I said, when you're fighting and you've lost a couple games, it's hard to get out early. It's a lot easier to get out early when you're 8-0 in league and 6-0 in league, but when you're not, you want to give a little bit more time there. But I usually try to get an hour and a half or less when it comes to league play practice schedule.
Do you so your preseason and early season non-conference play is pretty much like about a 2.5 hour practice?
Oh yeah, at least. Mm-hmm. 3.
Yeah, that's, what do you think about this? I ain't gonna say I am gonna say I for a second. I usually I kind of followed it after like Coach Burton a little bit, but preseason and then non-conference, it was 2.5 hours, nonstop. Didn't matter if we played 3 games in a week, we were 2.5 hours. But once you get into conference play, you start talking an hour and a half down to an hour, maybe even 45 minutes, because I have a philosophy, I think, and it could be wrong and it's not perfect, but I think by mid-January, you either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
At that point. And because now if I'm still having to teach you what I was teaching you in October, then in mid-January, you're just not going to get it. And I don't need to be in the gym because mid-January now we're going to, especially in South Carolina, mid-January, you're going to hit your stride and get ready to make your playoff push because you're on the second round of your region play. Mm-hmm. You're going to make your playoff push, finish wherever you're going to finish in your region. And so I'm trying to prevent injuries now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So now I'm coming down to 45 minutes, hour 15. And sometimes I've had teams look at me and be like, Coach, we're done. Yeah, we're done. Like, there's nothing else to talk about. Like, because the way with pace and space, you can kind of do this too. I don't need to work on the other team. I need to work on me because of the tempo we play. Teams can't practice at that tempo because that's how we practice on a daily basis. So as leading me into my next question, as a coach, every coach has different characteristics. I'm boisterous, I'm loud, I'm hard. my wife sometimes says I'm a little too hard, so I've kind of scaled back as I've gotten older. When I was younger, I was the Bobby Knight of the world. It worked, but now, you have to be a little different. So for me now, mental toughness and my tenacity is what I try to bring off, because I want my teams to take that identity. I want them to be mentally tough, whether we're winning, losing, or whatever. But what are two characteristics about you as a coach that if I ask Coach such and such, or Coach Wahlberg, or Coach whoever I ask about Coach Sainato, what are the two characteristics that are probably most going to come up, and what two characteristics are most important to you as a coach that you have?
Well, I would hope the first characteristic they would say is they would say that Nick is a hard worker. You know, many coaches, not all, but many coaches start from the bottom. And that's a story a lot of coaches tell. They were a good high school player and maybe dabbled around in college a little bit, but then were a manager or a student assistant, and then it was a personal trainer and did all those things and worked with the college guys, but wasn't necessarily good enough to be a college guy themselves as a player. And that's how a lot of coaches come up, and that's definitely how I came up. And so I learned that the only way to be on the court and to share the court with you guys and good coaches was to be the hardest worker. And there's no substitute for that. There's no way to, cut a corner, when you're the hardest worker. And that's what I learned. And so my teams and my coaches, I think they would say that we work the hardest out of the teams in our league. Doesn't always translate to wins, but it lets them know that if you want something, you have to work hard for it. It's not given to you. And that's one thing kids just, they have a hard time that, there's they're used to getting what they want. You want to have the answer for something, you Google it. You want to listen to this song, you just pull it up on your phone. Everything is, you don't have to ask questions. The questions are right there, and you find whatever you want. And so it's hard to, they expect that sometimes on the court, that you just get it. It's just going to be there. I'm going to win and I'm going to score all the points. Well, not everyone, only one team wins, and only if you guys score the points. And if you're not, then what are you going to do? So I would like to say hard work is one of them. I live in the gym. I work in the gym, and I'm not saying the other coaches don't. This is just what I do. And I don't like to compare myself to other coaches, because the comparison game is a slippery slope, and the comparison game is cancerous for high school kids. They live the comparison game with their Instagrams and their social media. I mean, it's poisonous for them. As adults, we're not quite as influenced by it, but I'm careful in doing that. I don't want to compare myself to anybody. And then the second thing, I'd like to think that they would think that I'm a servant leader. And, there's no job too small for me. I'm not too big headed to do that. I don't have a big enough ego to clean the floor. I will teach every kid on the team, whether he's a D1 guy or he's just the Nick Sainato on the team. Every kid gets that. Every kid gets that treatment. And there's a ministry in it, and a teaching in it that hopefully transcends basketball, that I try to exude in my everyday work with the kids. I'd like those to be the two things. Now, I don't know, you ask the kids who really like me, they probably have something good to say. You ask the kids who don't understand me, they might have something not as good to say. But those are the things that I would think that, hard work and servant leadership are the two things that I'd like to describe myself as. And then when I take the floor every day, I think of those things.
So with that, a lot of people say, when you go on an interview or when you talk to coaches or you talk to people, they always talk about a team taking the identity of the head coach, like their personality. They take on the personality of the head coach. And every time I ask this question, I have gotten a different answer. And it's good because, I can describe my identity and what my teams are going to look like. But, Coach Taylor described what his teams look like, and he actually had some good philosophies, and I thought it was pretty neat because he gave out 2 rules. Like, how many teams can function on 2 rules? His 2 rules were always tell the truth and always be on time. Like that amazed me, and it blew my mind because I was like, that's all the rules you got? Mm-hmm. I come out with this whole rap sheet. Like, I got like 12, 15 rules. Like, talk to me. But you have an identity as a coach. How important do you think it is that your team takes on your identity and your personality as a coach, but they take it on as players?
Well, I do believe that the team takes on the identity of the head coach. I believe that's a part of it. But more than that, I think the team takes on the identity of the best player. I think the best players really decide the identity and how the team does stuff. So that's why relationships are so important. If I know that my players listen to my best player more than they listen to me, especially as the season winds on, especially when you're running a year-round program. Like, because I run a year-round program, I coach my kids 10 months out of the year. And by January, February, they might not be as enthusiastic with my motivation speech as they were in the beginning of the year.
Right.
But they listen to the best player. And so those relationships are important because if me and my best player are on the same page, then I know that he's going to give that same stuff in concert with what I'm giving. The kids are going to get that on the team. Think about our teams. Bobby Brown was the personality of our team, and he was our best player, one of them. And there's different days there were best players, but as far as career goes and everything, he was the best player. And they played like Coach Burton, and that meant his toughness and not backing down and getting a guy's face and running and all that stuff. Definitely worked with the team. But they looked to Bobby when they looked to LB when stuff needed to happen. And so, I'm cognizant of that. And so I make sure that I try to have the really good relationship, if not the best relationship, with my best players, because I know if there's ever a way to get my philosophy across, it's going to be through him, sometimes even more so than through me.
That is true, especially our senior year, man. I remember on the bus coming back from, I forget where we were coming from. We were coming from, I know we were driving from LAX or to LAX, and I sat behind him on the bus and I told him, I said, listen, I said, I know you and I come from different cultures. You're an LA kid, I'm a South Carolina kid. So off the court, we don't mesh well, not because we don't like each other, but it's just, certain people you hang out with, certain people you don't. I said, but you and I have to be like this on the court, and the team can't see a difference. I said, because when we get in trouble, they're looking to you or me to make a play to get us out of it. Or they come to us for us to go be the voice to Coach Burton or Coach Newman or Coach Levy or whoever, Marlon Morton at the time, to be that person who talks for them. And if we don't do what we were doing, if we're not on the same page, it's going to affect the team. So I've learned something 3 days in a row. That is very enlightening, because that gives me another perspective as when I get ready to take over another program, that I need to be in tune with my best player, because at the end, they may be tired of hearing me yell. They may be tired of hearing me say, you got to box out, you got to box out, you got to crash off his boards. But if they're cool with the best player and they're like, yo, why you didn't crash off his boards? It makes that big of a difference.
Yeah.
So with pace and space, it's kind of hard to play a little bit of defense. So let's talk about defense. I don't say it's hard to play defense, but you have to be unique and creative in your defenses so that you can play at that certain pace. So what is your favorite defense, and what is your bread and butter defense? Let's do it that way.
Well, we're straight man to man is what we like to do.
Okay.
I've always been a defensive coach. I get really excited when I see the other team walk up and say, hey, let's go Michigan. Like, I know we got them beat, because you're not going to be, if we put the pressure on you that we want to put on you, we're not going to run Michigan. So now your players, especially at the high school level, those guys, coach said Michigan, I got to get to my spot in Michigan, regardless of my point guards being pressured, regardless if I can't get open in the lane or the spacing is poor. Now I'm running Michigan. And so now when that pressure hits the way it's supposed to, we take them completely out of everything they practice. And so when they're at practice, we're in their practice. When they're at practice and they work on their Michigan and UCLA and green and blue, like, we take that away with our pressure. That ideally we take that away, because now they can't run that stuff against us. And if we press and double the way I like, they can't run that. So now it's, have they worked on their half court trap in the double team? Have they worked on getting through? Have they worked on the same fast break style that I work on every day? Probably not. That gives us an advantage. If we're playing a more talented team and where our pressure is there and they can just see over us and run their plays, well, then they're going to execute their stuff pretty good. And so that hurts us a little bit there. I have gotten into zone for the first time in my career this year. last year, and it helped us. It definitely helped us. There was times where we needed it. We were a young team, and when we needed some zone play. But for me, it's press and it's man to man, and you do create more possessions. So teams would generally score higher than they normally score, but because they're used to 40 possession or 25 to 30 possession, now they're going 45 to 50 possession because it's just like this. So they're going to get more shots up. But pressure man to man is my ideal. Full court press and trapping, that's my ideal. We were going to do that this year, a lot of it, and I still hope to. But right now we're not able to do anything. But that's my ideal defense.
So when you're full court pressure, are you full court man? Because you said you didn't do a lot of zone. Are you full court man? Do you do a diamond press? What are you doing?
I generally like to work from the basket out. So we'll start in the half court, and if we can do good there, then we'll pick up full and we'll move it all the way to the other baseline if we can.
Okay. Yeah, I agreed. Like that practice tempo is hard to simulate a practice tempo if I play fast. You can't if you're used to scoring. If you're getting 40 possessions in a game, but I'm going to cause you to get 70 possessions in a game, it's a little bit different for you if you have to go up and down a little bit. But I like that idea of taking the other team out of their stuff. Reason being is because if your team hasn't been taught to be basketball players and they've only been taught to be robots,
right?
That's to your advantage if you pressure the team somewhere all the way to death. Like Dennis Felton had a saying, and I'm gonna tease him about it on Friday. He had a saying, if they're throwing skip passes, we're good. And I remember one game, the team was throwing skip passes. He's like, we got them throwing skip passes. I was like, we good. They ain't going to the basket because we were locked down and locked in. You can't run your stuff because, at the college level, they're scouting a play. And we're going to know your best actions. Pacific was very good at hiding their actions, but the main action when they start. But when you have a team throwing skip passes or they're going backwards or east-west, you're winning. If they start going north-south on you, you have a problem.
For sure. I'll challenge you a little bit on that. Skip passes is a key to our offense. We want to throw skip passes because we want to force closeouts.
Right.
So if you're throwing a skip pass, that means that defense is loaded up at the split line. And as you skip over, he's got to come out and close you out, and that's where we beat you. So I get what you're saying what he's saying. If you're running skip passes, you're not running your offense, you're not getting to the basket. But for me, we want skip passes because we think we can beat you when we throw skip passes.
And that's a good philosophy for your system because that's what you're thriving on. Like
right.
most team, your system, I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there, is like it's unorthodox. It's great because if you have a guy like a Bobby Brown or Frank Robinson, those athletic skills, or myself or Yafet or Ralphie, you closing out to me, I'm going to beat you because you're closing out to me, and I know, and I'm licking my chops because I know you're coming and you don't know which way I'm about to go. So closing out, I mean, even at the NBA level, closing out is hard to do, getting there. But man, that's good. And if I was playing you, I wouldn't allow you to throw skip passes. I try to take you out of that, and you just try to beat me going up and down the court. I mean, it would be a fun game, but I mean once we get off, we're still talking, but I got to see that on the board. But man, like I'm telling you, man, I've learned something the last 3 days, and I'm probably going to keep learning something new every day, which is what my goal is. And my goal for this is to make sure that coaches who are watching or players who are watching, that you're learning different things that you can add to your program. You can, whether it's a philosophy, like today, I'm going to add that fact that get better and get closer with my best player so that my best player can influence the rest of the team. Right. Because again, mid-January, you might not want to hear me yelling. And that's important. I mean, I think that, for me, about mid-January, I think I was tired of hearing Coach Burton yell.
Probably.
Like we all were, but he kept pushing, and, he was very challenging to play for, but he was a very good coach, very knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. And, he allowed us to play. With pace and space still, how much time do you spend looking at another team? Since you're pressuring so much, do you really scout their plays as much as you would if you were just playing regular?
I scout every team. I have every team's players down. I have their tendencies down. I have their plays down, their style, all of that. I scout them all, and then we go through. We usually will walk through the day before a game, and we'll go through their stuff and talk about what they're going to do on offense. Because, is if we're not going to stop them every time. If we were going to stop them every time, we don't have to work on any of that stuff. So we need to know their best 2 or 3 plays. We definitely need to know their out of bounds plays, because out of bounds is the one place on the court we can't pressure you. So you're able to run your stuff on out of bounds. We need to be able to know those. We need to know their player tendencies, and we go over that, and we do that all the time. It's big for me to do that, and I've spent more time on that than I had at Clovis West here, because, like I said, at Clovis West we were kind of cut above, and here we're much more even with the other teams. So I felt the responsibility to have to do that. But we definitely spend time scouting, and I spend more time than the kids do. But I'm always watching film and trying to figure out how to best beat, because it's an advantage. I mean, if you know what they're going to do, you can stop it. That's a huge advantage. Those little things add up. If you could stop their best out of bounds play 2 or 3 times, that makes a big difference in a close game.
So I'll challenge you back on that. If you know that you're going to put so much pressure on it, I challenge you, when you're looking at film, to just see how they handle the pressure against another team. Because if they're only playing a team that's going to walk the ball up the court, so this is one of my patented staples. When I talk to a coach about a team, or if I do get the players' tendencies, I just get my leading scorers and know who's going on, who's going to score the ball, who's going to have the ball in their hands. But what I do is, when I talk to another coach, hey, coach, how do they handle pressure? Well, we really didn't pressure them a lot, so they were able to run their stuff. But the one time that I did see them get pressured, they turned the ball over all over the place. Okay, coach, thank you. That's all I need. Do you have a film? Yes. Okay, cool. Can you send that to me so I can take a glance at it? But for you, I think this is my advice, I guess, a little bit. But if you are putting so much pressure on a team, you watching a team and they're walking the ball up the court is only going to be your advantage when you're playing that team that's better, that may be more skilled wise better, because now you do have to focus in more on that. But if you're playing a team that's pretty evenly matched and they don't handle pressure well, I would just pay attention to how they handle pressure and the tendencies of where they go at that point. Because now if I get double teamed, what's the first place they're going to send somebody to the middle of the floor to break it out. But that's good stuff. So last question. Give me your advice to aspiring young coaches, man, that are trying to get into business, or that are just starting out, that may be discouraged a little bit because of they might have had a losing season as a head coach or assistant coach, whatever it may be. Just give them some advice.
My first advice would be, you have to know what level you want to coach at. So if you want to coach in college basketball, you shouldn't spend much time in high school. You need to go right to college. You need to go be a video coordinator. You need to go be a manager, assistant manager, ops guy, assistant to the ops guy. You need to start at that level. You want to go to the NBA, you need to jump on an NBA team. There very rarely do you see the high school coach go to college. There's a lot of reasons for that. Financially, your retirement, your benefits, all the things, and then the education. Like, not everyone, you have to have a master's in college. People don't realize you have to have a master's to coach Division I basketball. You have to have a master's degree. You can't just, hey, I got a college degree, let me be a Division I basketball. It doesn't work that way. And so you have to be able to know what level you're coaching at, where you want to end up, and then start there. And then secondly, you have to know, look at, am I willing to work for free? Am I willing to spend more hours for free? Because, as coaches in high school, we don't get paid. I mean, we get paid, but it's a drop in the bucket. And we are sacrificing personal time, health, family time, time with our church, time in the Word, and you're sacrificing that for a basketball team or for a sports team. You have to be willing to do that. Okay, that you can't. I don't. When I interview coaches, I don't sugarcoat it. I don't. Everyone thinks when you become a coach, the band's playing, the cheerleaders are there, everyone's there cheering, the cameras are there. That's 32 minutes out of my day. That's 64 minutes a week at best. What about the other 100 or so hours? What are you doing then? It's a lot of work. And so you have to let them know how much work it's going to be. And then you have to decide why you want to do it. Like, are you doing it, because you love basketball? Are you doing it because you love to compete? Are you doing it because you see it as a ministry for young people? You have to understand what your why is. And then that will help guide you with what you want to do. If you're just doing it because you love basketball, I've seen a lot of guys fizzle out with that, because you could love basketball from your couch. You could love basketball, maybe even more so, in that regard, where you're watching it and you're looking at it on the internet, you're doing your fantasy sports, like, you can love it from there. That's a part of it. We all love basketball, but, are you in it for the kids? Are you in it to minister? Because if you're in it for the kids, those guys, at least in my opinion, have the longest lasting time as coaches, because you see it as a ministry. You see it as a chance to help develop young people at a pivotal time in their lives, and happen to use the vehicle of basketball that we all love to do it. And so that would be you have to know who you are, what level you want to coach at, how much you want to work, and why you're doing it. And if those answers are pretty similar to what our answers are, then you're probably going to do pretty good in it. If they're not, then you may fizzle out. You may, you'll burn out, because it's a ton of work, and it is an absolutely thankless job. There is no other job. You may think of your parent. Parents don't get thanked for doing their job. You don't get thanked for doing your job. You only hear when someone thinks you didn't do your job. That's all you hear. You don't hear the thank yous. You don't hear the good jobs. You don't hear the, I appreciate it. You do, but not very often. You hear, I have an inbox, I have a folder in my mailbox full of emails of people telling me that I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't, that I've done a bad job, or that I could do a better job. You only hear those. And so, you have to be tough enough to handle that. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. So if coaches can see that and understand that, it's the business is such a great business to be in. It's such a fulfilling business, but you can't go in there thinking it's just, the band and Friday Night Lights, and that's all it is. It's so much more than that. You can get on that and get on board with that. You can carve out, I think, the best life. I can't think of a better life than being around kids and being around basketball and teaching. I mean, there just isn't anything better than that, at least in my opinion.
Right. Well, Facebook, this has been the special edition of Full Court Press with Coach Jay today. In about 50 minutes to an hour, I'll be right back at it. But please share this video here on Facebook. It will be on my YouTube channel at Full Court Press with Coach Jay. You can go there, like, subscribe, do all the above. I appreciate everybody tuning in to this video. Nick and I are signing off, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Jay.